Welcome, all of you fellow arcanists out there, to the Frith Guild podcast, where we explore an amazing world full of mystical creatures and their partners. Our hosts are Eric Smith and Scott Wareham, and they'll be your guides along this journey through death and dragons. So grab your Eldrin, strap on your swords, and get ready to defend the Argo Empire from evil. Throughout this series, if you have not caught up to the chapters being discussed today, we urge you to hit the pause button, grab your copy of this wonderful book, and catch up. We'll be here when you get back. After refusing to wrench the love of his life away from a duel which might kill her, Volke joins Lael searching for the thief's mysterious ringleader among the bars of the Smithy district, where regular law enforcement fears to patrol. Alone with only his Eldrin and a will-o-wisp arcanist for backup, and no one in the Frith Guild having any idea where he went, what could go wrong? But before we get back to the book, let's look at a piece of advice from the series. Hatsa, a Hydra arcanist, says,
"This is the Frith Guild, home to legendary heroes who saved countless lives, from the mundane to the magnificent. We don't beat people into their place. We demand people step up to the challenge. So, what say you? Can you live up to those expectations?"
With that, let's join Eric and Scott for chapters 41 through 45 of Coliseum Arcanist.
Hello and welcome back to the Frith Guild podcast. I'm Eric.
And I'm co-host Scott.
And today we're diving into chapters 41 through 45 of the Coliseum Arcanist. Before we get into today's chapters, I do also want to thank everybody for listening. And we would like to ask everyone to show some love by giving us a like, comment, sharing, rating, basically whatever platform you're listening on for us to let us know how we're doing. And in addition to that, I also want to make mention that the Frith Chronicles Wiki link is in the description, along with the link for the Capital Station Discord server. So you can go over there and join in on the fun there. And without further ado, we're going to get in chapters 41, A Man with Many Jobs. So Volke goes into like master of disguise mode with his long overcoat, and he even wets his hair so he can like put his hair down. That way, nobody can see that he's an arcanist. He's looking for the man that's paying out the jobs, and he's trying to find basically a bar where he would be at. And Volke goes in and just, "Hey, I need a job." And the bartender knows exactly who he's asking for. But unfortunately, she said, "Nah, I haven't seen him." Volke's outside walking around in the Smithy district trying to find this guy. He kind of has this thought of, man, I really got to pity the fool that tries to mug me.
A little self-confidence going.
Yep. Probably thinking like, maybe if I can get my hair up into a mohawk and be like Mr. T.
Be the fool.
So he does keep trying different pubs and bars and all this, and he's getting straight answers at least. So at least he knows he's doing something right.
It's got to be the coat. The lost and found coat is just too good to turn down.
Are we sure it wasn't imbued with something to give him extra cutting abilities? Why is nobody concerned whatsoever that Volke is just walking around, going all over the place, and nobody knows where he is?
I feel like this is his MO. He really seems to do this a lot. Like, I just win my tourney match. I'll just go bop around for a little bit.
I'm gonna go exploring to see what's out here because I'm such an island bumpkin that I want to go see the city. Lo and behold, Zaxxas comes running down the alley, and he's like, "Hey Volke, hey, how's it going, buddy?"
I'm not your buddy, pal.
I'm not your pal, man. And so this is kind of like an instant Volke realizes something's not right because this is not Zaxxas whatsoever. And he instantly realizes that it's Karna, and she's actually kind of irritated that Volke figured this out so fast.
Volke seems to always figure this out. He quickly got it a couple of other times as well. He seems to have just a really good feel for his friends.
Or at least knows their mannerisms well enough. And I can imagine if like there's somebody that Karna knew more personally.
Someone she knew more intimately.
Right. Then she would know their mannerisms and can hide herself in their skin a lot better. So Luthair was kind of suspicious of what was going on, but not suspicious enough to take action against Zaxxas, quote unquote.
He just does not feel like he would be a good guard because he a lot of times is like, I've thought of it, but I didn't want to step in. Like he's never quite willing to take the leap.
Right. Like Of all people, do you think Luthair would be the one that's like, let me be Mama Hen here and make sure I take care of my baby Volk? But he's just like, meh, screw it. The kid swims, he swims. If he sinks, he sinks. Volk gets touched by Karna. He goes into like doppelganger mode, so like he can't do anything. And then out of nowhere, Fain just stabs Karna in the throat. Like, no big deal. And Volk's like, you know what? Maybe it's a good thing that I have a stalker in Fain because he just saved me.
First time that one's ever been thought as well. I'm just glad I have a stalker.
So, and this is again one of those moments that Fain realizes that Karna is Karna before Luthair does. And I'm starting to lose some trust in Luthair here. Like, he's supposed to be his elder and he's supposed to be the one looking out for Volk. But here Fain is, being the renegade pirate, taking care of Volk better. We do find out that Karna and the crew of the Sun Chaser were hired by the person who was doling out these jobs. Now, the Sun Chaser is an airship that is held up by rock magic. And Fain recognizes the ship from Port Crown, and Karna even recognizes him being a part of Callisto's crew. So Karna thinks that Fain is actually his brother Calro, and fortunately, he's not. And again, there's that, like, I imagine there's that awkward, like, Spider-Man pose of, like, wait a minute, I know you and you.
Everyone having a little standoff against each other.
Right, well, like, I'm not truly the bad person here. You're the bad person because this is where I saw you at. So then even Luthair recognizes the Sun Chaser and identifies them as basically mercenaries. People that are paid to do a job. They don't care what the job is. As long as they're getting money at the end of it, they good. And the crew is made up of arcanists that have either been kicked out of guilds or have been rejected from other guilds previously. So I feel like this is kind of that band of misfit toys from the claymation animation, Christmas movies. Karna does agree to tell Volk the name of the person who hired the crew, as long as Volk leaves the Frith Guild and joins the Sun Chaser.
First, he's recruited by the Steelthorn Inquisitors. Now he's getting recruited by the Sun Chaser. He's got everyone chasing after him.
Beating off girls with sticks. He's got guilds he's got to beat off now. Like, can't catch a break. He's famous. So this is where chapter 42 starts up at Celebrations. Karna is in the belief that the Frith Guild will actually ruin Volk, and she wants to be the only person to ruin, and Fain wants to give them privacy again.
He's just, I know I stabbed you in the neck, but maybe you two want to have some alone time right now.
Maybe Fain's like, okay, like, do you guys really want that? Like, Volk, have you matured a little bit since the last time this opportunity arose, or are we still going off of that? So the whole crew of the Sun Chaser knows about Volk, and this is kind of a weird one because, again, it makes sense with the Steelthorn Inquisitors knowing about Volk, having a nightmare. Okay, but the fact that the whole crew of the Sun Chasers knows about him, did like Karna go back to the Sun Chaser and was like, "Hey, everybody, I met this silly nightmare arcanist that." That's very gullible. Let me take his guild pendant. Yeah.
You should bet on him.
Right. And so the blacksmith got money on Volk winning the tourney. The captain's impressed that Volk's was allowed to not join the Steelthorn Inquisitors Guild. That's impressive in itself.
He is the only nightmare arcanist outside of it, so he is standing in his own right there.
I still bet the guildmaster is probably like having his cards of all, like, stat cards of all the nightmares, and not having Volk's is like, God damn it, it's not a complete set.
It'll be worth so much more once I get the set.
But it's complete. So Volk, in his ability to get close to Karna again, actually gets his guild pendant back. Finally.
About time.
Right?
He's gone a while without it.
I mean, again, apprentices lose shit. So Karna agrees to a favorite ode to Volk. And Volk's like, whoa. What do I have to do in return? She's like, I don't know yet. But I'll say this. It's not going to be illegal or anything objectively immoral. So that way you're okay.
Mr. Play by the rules.
Right. So at least she understands that Volk won't do anything outside of the rules. I think a lot of other people need to take this, and at least his enemies need to be like, hey, the dude don't play outside of the rules. Let's use that to our advantage here. But
she was the only one smart enough to figure it out. So
right. So the Sun Chaser really wants Volke, or at least to meet him. So she does tell Volke finally that after he agrees to her deal, that a Ghoul Arcanist was paying for odd jobs, like getting information on what trinkets are worn by the Knights, Draconic, and the Sky Legionnaires. And Karna was technically hired to steal a crown and then locating the rune stones, but that wasn't necessarily her job. She was mainly just to steal the crown. She did give them the information for it as part of it, so. But she did say that she actually didn't even steal the crown because she didn't want to, and she felt guilty, I guess.
The lockdown happened before she could get to it, probably.
I wonder if her morals got in the way of stealing it.
Volke changed her.
Look at Volke being the good example.
The influencer.
Maybe he's Karna's knight in shining armor. Volke remembers that he has the occult compass available and does ask Karna to get any kind of ghoul trinket whatsoever so that he can actually track down this Ghoul Arcanist. Volke and Fain start taking their walk back to the inn. And Volke tells Fain that he talked to Zelfree, and Zelfree actually has agreed to train Fain. Fain says that Volke is too trusting, and I've got to agree with Fain on this.
Agreed. Easy agree.
Volke, I'm sorry, you're a bit too naive at times, and you got a big heart, and we all love you for it, but how has it not burnt you even worse than it already has?
He's gotten lucky. He barely escaped after Karna, and that could have been real rough.
Yeah, again, that's kind of what saved him, but again, it's just that how they're very lucky that he hasn't gotten kidnapped. Everyone was in Volke's room when he gets back, and they're all they're getting wasted in his room. Like Nicklin is sitting in a mug of ale, wasted.
I want to see that so bad.
Just Nicklin just passed out in a mug.
Just letting it soak into his skin. He says it's got self-aging properties with it.
Oh yeah, you gotta absorb that. He finds out that they're actually celebrating their win after the tournament, and they kind of just assumed that Volke was going to take off, which kudos to them figuring it out. So they decided they're just going to move the whole party into Volke's room so that when he does come back, supposedly if he came back, that he'd be there to celebrate with them. So ironically, they ask where Volke has been and if they've been found out that he was with Fain. So Volke having a really crappy poker face is kind of I was with Fain. So the whole atmosphere in this room shifts. I imagine everybody that's hammered at this point is probably stone cold sober. And Addie, thankfully, does remind everyone to put it in the past and try to enjoy the present. Volke does agree that he will be responsible for Fain, and that if he makes Lyvia uncomfortable whatsoever for any period of time, even for a heartbeat, that Volke will no longer associate with Fain. Volke does let Fain in, and immediately Zaxxas just starts going you're going to listen to this. We're in charge. You're going to listen to what I say because I'm in charge. And you're going to listen to what Lyvia says because she's my woman.
I'm sure she enjoyed being called that.
I mean, they're in a new relationship. I imagine there's that oh, he just said that I'm his woman. A little bit of swooning. She's badass enough that she doesn't need to be called that. She can stand on her own. You know that for a fact. But
yes.
I imagine there's still that aw.
I'm his starfish.
Yes, Fain and Wraith were kind of okay, go ahead, start beating me up so that way I know my place.
And the guild just sits there what? We don't hate.
Yeah, how badly were you beaten on Callisto's ship? Everybody basically laughs at him, and they're yeah, we won't do that. You just need to step up, and that's all we're really going to ask you. And then Hexa comes flying bear hug toward Fain, so at least we know Hexa doesn't have a problem with him too much. Moving into chapter 43, the tournament round 3. We're getting some training in for the next round, and that was the only thing to keep Volke distracted, thankfully.
And this round is the last partner round. So after this, they will split up and go 1v1 for the remaining.
Zaxxas is still like busy with Ilya, and part of me wants to know what they're doing, but the other part of me doesn't want to know what they're doing because, you know, adults, new relationship and such. Fain goes in and starts training with Volke instead. And on the day of the tournament, Volke goes down to the Coliseum and sees that the two of them are going to be competing against the other Huntsman Guild apprentices. And these are the Denglong Arcanist and the Earl King Arcanist. And this is going to take some serious strategizing to defeat them, because this is basically like anti-Volke and Zaxxas team. Like they're fighting a light type and a fire immune type. Like this is gonna be difficult. And Volke notices that the Stone Golem Arcanist and Nero are gonna be fighting Ilya and Hexa. So Volke finds himself a little room to start reading up on what to do to defeat these. And Zaxxas walks in like at the last second and wants to start strategizing then. Like, where were you?
But it's also Volke's fault they didn't strategize earlier.
Right. Zaxxas is like, yeah, it's all your fault. You weren't around, so you know, you're the reason.
You missed your shot. You got to take more responsibility.
So they get out to the arena, and Jevel, the Reaper Arcanist, is out there with his apprentices, sees Zelfree, and is like, hey, let's make a bet. If the Huntsman Guild wins, then Zelfree will have to fight me. So Zelfree's like, all right, cool, I got this. How about when we win, we'll get 10 star shards and 25 gold crowns. And you know, Jevel's like, we got this. This is like the team.
It's in the bag. We've got the type advantage.
Yep.
And that brings us into chapter 44, which is the light show. So Zelfree's excellent advice to Volke and Zaxxas is don't lose. He does not want to have to fight, so he's banking on them for pulling. To give a little bit of a background, the Denglong is this dog dragon creature. It's the size of a wolf and has a red mane, scales, and talons. The Earl King on the other end is very tiny. It's a little fairy, and it leaves a little illusion in its wake when it moves. So it's got this little trail of fairy dust almost behind it. And as they're getting set to begin the battle, Lyvia actually sends golden poppies down to them through Forsyth.
Aww. I imagine she's practically like hanging off the spectator box, like trying to get as close to Volke and Zaxxas. It's so cute.
Their biggest supporter. The battle kicks off, and the fairy immediately tries to blind them, essentially shoot out a huge blast of light across the entire arena.
Thankfully, Zaxxas did watch all of the game film on this, on their previous battles, because he knew this was coming and tells Volke to shield his eyes.
Volke tries to use his shadows, but anytime he creates anything, the light from the fairy completely destroys it. Zaxxas isn't having any better luck. He's trying to fight the Denglong, but again, fire immune, so his fire has having no effect on it as well. And at this point, Volke remembers his shield and that it reflects magic. So he turns to Zaxxas and tells him, aim your fire at my shield instead of at the Denglong. And lo and behold, this creates a giant beam of light and ends up knocking the Denglong out of the arena.
This must have been such a confusing moment for all of the spectators, to include the announcer, because he even was like, is he just attacking his own teammate? Like, what?
I have to beat somebody up, but I can't beat the enemy up, so I'm just going to beat up my teammate. A little friendly fire.
Fire good. I like fire.
Yes. They do repeat this tactic on the Denglong Arcanist and end up knocking him out as well, but unfortunately they're hit by an illusion, and they appear that they are inside of a meadow. Zaxxas remembers the setup of the arena and dashes forward to try and punch out the fairy and the Arcanist. The Earl King does dodge this, but ends up getting knocked out by Forsyth, who is coming in behind. So at this point, the Arcanist exits the arena as well, and they do end up winning the match.
I just imagine just watching Zaxxas going like, jumping up, trying to punch the fairy.
As if the fairy hadn't moved either. Like, I
Right.
get the arena stayed the same, but that fairy's probably moved since you last. The next fight up is Hexa and Ilya. And if they win, they will end up facing Volke and Zaxxas in the semifinal. Which does brings us to chapter 45. The name of the chapter is the semifinals. We are going to start just before the semifinals with Hexa and Ilya's match. So they again are fighting Nero, who is wearing armor that is made from the scales of his Sturworm, and the stone golem. The Sturworm is a venomous creature. It has a very corrosive touch, and they are known man-eater.
Do you think that the Nullstone, sorry, this is just a random thought too, the Nullstone that's in the castle, do you think that gets like turned off and on every single time that Vercingetorix roars from this Coliseum, or does he have to be in the castle?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure, does he add something to his roar to turn it off? Like, does he have levels of roar that he can use?
Like, imagine being like an Earl King or what's the one that's holding up the telekinetic field around the Coliseum? Encanto?
Yeah, Encanto. Something like that.
Imagine having one of them employed to like do the laundry and that kind of stuff. And there they are just trying to take the eggs into the kitchen, and all of a sudden, he roars for this next fight to start, and their power cuts out, and they're just like, God dang it.
Drop the eggs again.
And they go out to get more eggs, and then the same thing happens again. Like,
there's got to be a workaround.
Right.
So when the match starts, the worm immediately goes for Raisin much quicker, and essentially is too fast for them to even react to, knocks Raisin out of the arena. The golem is absolutely monstrous, swings and knocks Ilya and Hexa out. So the only one left is Nicolin. So he teleports into the Arcanist pants and just starts biting him all over. The Arcanist is jumping around, ends up jumping out of the arena just to get away, which does eliminate both of them.
But Nicolin didn't technically touch the ground.
It's a good point. I feel like they probably just gave him that one.
Yeah.
He didn't have much chance of coming back in. So they come out of the arena and they are distraught, and Volke ends up going over to comfort Ilya, and essentially by reminding her that her focus really is on Callisto and not on the tournament. And Zaxxas, in order to be the most amazing boyfriend that he is, jumps in and tries to comfort her instead.
Probably Volke's like, God dang it, here's another competition that I don't want to start or be involved in whatsoever. But Zaxxas is going to make this competition.
Yes, just let this one's about Ilya. We don't need to make it about ourselves. So the matchup is now set for the semifinals. So Volke is going to go against Nero, and Zaxxas is going to go against the Stone Golem Arcanist. So Volke, in preparation for his match, he ends up going to talk to Nero. He tells him about Adelgis, about the leech, how Adelgis' life is in danger. And Nero does say that Thiessen has something that would heal, but he's only going to give it to Volke if Volke throws the match.
What a freaking douche.
No respect for anyone but the dad. Everyone just wants the dad's love.
Right. And, I mean, if the dad said, hey, go jump off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge?
It sounds like it, honestly. And that concludes our chapters. So we'll move on to the bestiary.
All right. Starting with the Earl King, we have the mythology comes from European folklore and myth. The Earl King is a sinister elf who lingers in the woods. He talks to children who stay in the woods for too long and then kills them by a single touch. Because why not? Or in world lore, Earl Kings are considered the king of fairies. They do create powerful lights and illusions. And if they're old enough, they can ensnare others with false feelings of infatuation. So little cupids here. Mischievous and callous, these mystical creatures often hurt people on accident with their lethal magic effects. It's like an oopsie moment.
Not a fun fairy.
No. So these fairies are tier 3, and their production is quite interesting as well, as they are fable born. And they are strictly born from a queen's fairy who consumes her arcanist corpse. So they start out as a queen fairy, and their arcanist dies, and then they eat their arcanist. And then they turn into an Earl King.
A small correction. The Queen Fairy vomits, and then the vomit turns into an Earl King. Gross.
Again, not a nice fairy.
No, I don't like this one. For evocation, they do have a very powerful light. They're able to manipulate light and to create illusions. Earl King's augmentation on themselves make them immune to instant death magics, while their augmentation on others allow people to see through illusions. So what I'm hearing in this is they could kill a Reaper and not die.
That would seem to be true. So King's Revenge may not be effective against them.
Therefore, Earl Kings are better than Reapers?
They seem to have their weakness. So
yeah, but, I mean, just looking strictly at the King's Revenge.
The next one we are going to touch on is the Stone Golem, which in mythology is an animated anthropomorphic being in Jewish folklore, and it's created from inanimate matter, usually clay or mud. Golems are made of the mineral in the area where the golem spawns. And if you look at the wiki for these, if you played Tears of the Kingdom, the Flux construct, it's very similar to that, but in stone. They are tier 3 with a fable birth, but the fable isn't quite figured out, and their trial of worth involves a test of resilience. Not much detail on their evocation, but they are able to manipulate stone that's of the same type. So a clay golem can manipulate clay, so on and so forth. And they are able to augment their own powers, essentially becoming stronger and more durable. And their true form, while it's unobserved, it does require a golem to find a very rare metal deep within the earth.
And with that, we'd like to thank you everyone for listening today. We do want to remind you that we do post new episodes every Wednesday morning around 11 Eastern, 10 Central, and 8 Pacific Standard. We are on all podcasting platforms and are also on YouTube as well for video. And we do want to thank our editor, Dan Mackison, for including pictures and links for everything. And if you wanted to reach out to us, we are on Gmail at frithguildpod@gmail.com, or on Facebook or any other social media at Frith Guild Podcast. We want to also thank Frith Chronicles Wiki, as well, as it is a great resource for us to use. And again, link to everything down below in the description section for the podcast and YouTube channel. Thank you. And Scott, do you have anything else to add to this week?
Like, share, subscribe.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.